So excellent morning to all of you gathered here. Prof, the chair, the resource persons from various places, Prof. Gandhigram, my good friend from Kerala, Professor Haji, Professor, my friends, my scholars, children. Morning to all of you, my pronouns. Really, it is a pleasant moment, in my life, beginning career, early career. So my research was on comparing Anglo-Indian and Indo-Anglian literature. The concept, I have chosen is Indian history. Indian history pursued by Anglo-Indian writers and Indo-Anglian, by them writers. Well, I have chosen historical personages: Nana Sahib, Bahadur Shah, Shah Jahan, Shivaji, and few others. Teacher, Professor Gupta, Balrama Gupta, asked me, to reduce, the quantum of novels. Then I applied the double-quoted romance, deleted, few novels. So that was exclusively written for British audience. The romance, that was entertained, then among the Indians, the personages, here I have chosen, I have got, was something, the area of interest, to them, not the pain, not the tears, not, the sufferings, not the sifting of spaces, not the boundaries, not the people, not our leaders. So everything, that they kept it, as hidden. So the early history documented, was not of that our area of interest. Even now, that we are struggling to prove, struggling to take, that authentic, and that is now in the hands of we people, the historians, here. Even Ramila Thapur, the professor and the living historian, the JNU professor and living historian, who has changed, her attitude now. Writing history, that she has moved to creative writing. And now she is validating, I want two values, volume 1 and 2, Indian history. Yes, she is offering good amount of space for teachers of English. So we are actually taking in our hands now historicity and new historicism. So enriching our own scholars and students and taking, the content to the new leaders. I don't want to use, the young adult leaders now. That is, a different area. Their want of space is, entirely different, right? But few readers, that who are very much fond of, looking for truth. And we are now, dealing with alternate truth also, right? So exactly, a coincidence. March 23rd, is. So March 23rd, 1919. So I am taking few short stories, to take you, so that you can understand my choice of title. How that certain happenings or historical events, that are marred, distorted. Okay. So March 23rd, is a milestone in the history of India's independence struggle. So today is 29, March 29, right? Maybe my good friend, host has chosen, the time also, right? The coincidence, with that. March 23, 1919. So Gandhiji was in Chennai on the invitation of Kasturi Ranga Iyengar. Gandhiji had hitherto been struggling to find a way to counter the draconian and recently enacted Rowlatt Act by the British. So March 23rd that was, and today is March 29. It was in the early hours that day that he dreamt of the idea of mass hartal, to counter the act. So many may still be unaware of this pivotal moment, yes. Because we don't have enough deliberations, or discourse on this particular incident. So this pivotal moment and this importance, in our history does spark Gandhiji describing it in his autobiography, in the chapter, that wonderful spectacle. Right. So March 23, 1919. Many such moments of indomitable courage, insurrection, and sacrifice which have left their imprint on the freedom struggle have never got their due. So 1857 rebellion also, the first war of independence. But the many spirited revolts against the British Empire in South India. So the space now we are occupying. South India, prior to this, such as the Tingal Revolt, the Polygar Rebellion, and the Vellore Mutiny, are scarcely mentioned. So what was their taste and what is our expectation today? We are not, misguided, but the incidents, that the Indians wholeheartedly, that taken part, right? Or simply, that, yes, hidden from our own views and vision. Now, the right moment, the central government's Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, initiative to celebrate and commemorate 75 years of freedom. The endeavor to honor such and some milestones and icons, right? We had actually an event in Gandhigram very recently, during a convocation ceremony, that we actually, launched a gallery, the support of political science department, right there in our institute. Such and some heroes, that were identified and they were displayed, given significant importance, there in the gallery. There we happen to come across, so many people, yes. Those you don't find, there in the history. So with this trend of, selfless nationalistic stream, India's independent movement was a crucible that coalesced people from contradictory and even conflicting backgrounds and ideologies. So history was seen in the 19th century as an empirical search for external truths corresponding to what was considered to be absolute reality of the past events. So now you can understand, why I have designed, that title as such. So, since postmodern theorists, think that historical fiction is problematic because historical narrative can never be, complete. A few definitions of the postmodern version of the historical fiction emphasize its involvement in the epistemological problems present in representing the past. Yes. So this, I take, a very, very small story, right? The story of partisan, and if time permits, that I'll take, one more. This is by a journalist A newspaper man's experiencing, an event, in his life. His name is Sangar Ghosh. The story's title, is The Scent of a Story. Actually, this is the chapter on how Bengal's feminine went undocumented, by press. So this is in first person narration. A friend of the world, writes. One of my greatest regrets with reporting, over 3 million people died of starvation in Bengal with hardly any mention in the media. Right? So how that this was actually hidden? The British historians, or the rulers, the colonies, they never entertain the historians, from Indian side, the writers, from Indian side. Also, that they just go through, the content, prepared by their own media people. So that of real Australian unpronounceable locales made it in the front pages, the media, the print media. But the death by starvation of Indians, almost equal to 2/3 of the population of Scotland, was something to be wished away. The story is, during this time, your human frozen found anchor in B's parents. He is one of the characters. And this human possum, his name was Rama. And when he collapsed on the landing of 7A Vidyasagar Street in North Calcutta, Bengal, the working skeleton was taken in by Captain N. Chowdhury, who is B's father. The skeleton was handed over to Nanamoni. Nanamoni is B's mother. He was nursed to health, 3 square meals a day. 3 square meals a day was all he needed. And in time he became the major donor of the household. Starvation due to want of food. Rice was actually there in India. They weren't, taken care of. They weren't, given enough. The only concession he had to make was a change of name. One of the Jamais, that means sons-in-law. Jamais of the Chowdhury household was called Rama. Since the mother-in-law, Nanamani could not call a household help, no matter what his status, by the same name. She named him Jagabandhu. Jagabandhu, another name of Lord Rama, literally meaning friend of the world. That is the way the story is titled, a friend of the world. Jagabandhu's father was a carpenter in Jessore. Jessore is a place very near to Calcutta. And he used to help out his father in the shop. His mother had tragedy struck the household when Jagabandhu turned 17 years in 1942. It all started with rumors. Yes, that was the day, rumor was very common. The rumor is about the food grains availability, and the shops would only bring in small quantities to sell each day. That was actually the ration given to them. It is not the ration that were available to the people, common people, but even the shops were given less. Normally, petty tradesmen and all job workers would buy rice. Even today, the scene is available in certain spaces. And other staples at the end of the day with their day's earnings. But of late, the shops would either be empty or be shut. By afternoon, prices went up on an hourly basis. What is a rumor, right? The rumors, become stronger. There was shortage of food because the government, the rulers, the colonies, the government had brought up the whole crop and had sent it to feed soldiers in different lands. See that, our own production that was actually taken to some other spaces, and that was given to soldiers, in different places, different lands. Those spaces were occupied by the colonies. Jagbandhu's father could not find work. Everyone was spending all they had to stock up on rice. The family had no option but to move out of Jessore. So that is, they have to go away. Search for something. Search for rice and search for survival. That made them to move to Calcutta, the city, because they thought, like everyone was thinking, they thought that Calcutta would offer some space for survival. They can they can get find food, they ended in failure. Both the sisters died. Father died. The only person was alive is this Jagbandhu. And what happened to him? Again, he collapsed in front of Chaudhry's place. So this was something with one family and 5 members. Now what actually, so the journalist's perception, right? So I took out, the journalist, speaks. I took out a bit of the great calamity for reasons unfathomable. There were all kinds of restrictions on the transport of food grains. There was grain rooting, in the Punjab, but traders couldn't send it to Bengal. B, the system. B made at least 5 trips to her home in Calcutta from Lucknow in 1943 and 1944 with our children, and most of their luggage was filled with rice. So you can understand, that people, take, rice without the knowledge of the rulers from one space to other space. But the lady, was involving in it. B was involving in it. So the worry is, if caught by the railway or police authorities, should have been treated as a communal criminal. So the only journalist, I'm not including the vernacular press, I can think of, who tried to highlight news about the famine was Ian Stephens. So lucky, that there are some people, British people also, who are doing human service. Recording, the events. But what happened to that, right? That is this. In a series of hard-hitting articles, especially those of 14 and 16 October 1943, he gave a graphic account of the feminine and delivered a stinging critique of inaction of the administration. See that? How bold enough, this gentleman Stephens is. Further, he had visiting cards made with his name on one side, and the most gruesome pictures of death on the streets by starvation in Calcutta on the other side. The visiting card, at one side, his name and address. At the back, what you can see is the people who died on the streets, of Bengal, Calcutta, on the other side, and made sure that all senior officers in Delhi got at least one. It came to an end. As a final wrap-up shop of the feminine, a commission was set up with the greatest care given by the selection of compliant committee members, and all the evidence presented to the commission was held in camera. As a further precaution, the evidence collected was ordered to be destroyed after the final report was filed. Sir Manilal Nanavati, you know that familiar name, one of the committee members, managed to save his copies, and these ended up in the National Archives of India. Very, very rare and one of the few records that are available. National Archives of India buried under the restricted tag the Nanavati papers. The final report was signed in August 1945. A beautifully written document full of information and as expected, utterly misleading. Moreover, the war was over. Horrors of feminine had faded with time and with public attention focused on getting on with life. See, what has become significant? It is life. It is not that feminine, that matters. Feminine, that matters, I'm sorry. famine on matters, but life, all with Viceroy Archibald Wavell's skills of procrastination and obfuscation. The famine became an invisible event in Indian and world history. At last, what we have in mind is famine. What famine? So this is one event that is more than enough, to say that the British, that they have hidden, certain things. Things, that are actually, showing, the Indians, contribution to this sort of, eventual recording, very, very strong. So those are all, removed, right? Literature from our side, literature from the new historicist perspective, which believe that we don't have clear access to any, but the most basic facts of history. Our understanding of what such facts mean is strictly a matter of interpretation. So now I tell one thing, Floroni's tale, Meadows' tale, and even you do have Patricia Wentworth, all those Anglo-Indian writers, they portray their picture, of course, the heroes but their contribution to Indian mutiny or the struggle for independence, not that clear, not that vehement. But when you come across the same that the personages and the events connected with them, that are narrated of course from their own understanding, the Indians, the Indo-Anglian, right, what I mean. So for example, Manonmaniam in Devil's Street, Nana Sahib is portrayed. Nana Sahib that comes to you as a heroic person who has made the first war of independence very, very significant. So his point of view, right, Manonmaniam's perception, there you can see is that historically, that authentic, that we believe. I believed when I did my research. But today, what actually that we make out of that narration is something different, right? Because his own personal, within double quotes, that also comes alive there, right? When you look that narration, maybe that the alternate history, right? We don't have any proof. We don't have exact proof that in our hands, right? Our own historians, they made the Indian history available after the independence, not earlier. They weren't allowed. But those early histories, drawn. The early histories, that designed by the British historians are not, that authentic. Those are all, something distorted. Asserts, that history. Similarly, cultural materialism, cultural development of migrant life. Therefore, from this aspect also, literature proclaims history. Corollary to this, literary fiction too states history as a scholar opines. I quote, "Fiction must surely take its cue from history, as surely as it takes its place in history." Now you can understand, Patricia Wentworth, the title of the novel is Devil's Way. Manonmaniam has given the title the same, The Devil's Way. Both are about Nana Sahib. But when you assess the heroism or the contribution made by Nana Sahib to the historic mutiny, right? Sipahi mutiny, who has actually overcome the other. Certainly, that we speak, in favor Manonmaniam, leaving, Patricia Wentworth, the other side. 1/3 or 1/4, as such, that we say we actually, declare. But the true authentic, truth or fact that when you when you try to understand from these narratives, both are narratives, right? one that was done before independence, the other one that came late after independence, like we know that. So the time that the time between the Anglo-Indian person and the Indian person, that when you assess or the time that was taken for the Indians to narrate such an incident, right? When you consider all these things, what you can understand is still it is a doubt, right? That's why that I use the term dethroning the events, right? The events again. The interesting thing that so thus we can deduce that fiction can be further divided into live and represented histories, right? Represented histories. So the represented histories can be discovered in historical books, annals, etc. While the former, that is the lived one, biographies. Even autobiographies, that are treated as autofictional, right? That question, again coming, right? Autofictional. So even autobiographies. So we do have, that, interpretations, in the present scenario. So these accounts on being grounded upon life experiences, hence non-fiction also joins. Now, I told you about Romila Thakur. Now she has become, a very serious non-fictional writer. She used to write, essays and commentaries also. After so Romila Thakur, after documenting, history, realizing, that she might have read a lot the historicism and other components, the latest developments, realize that the interpretations, are possible on her own writing, her own historic writing. And she has taken, something, and then she started writing all these things. Okay, all these things. So non-fiction. From memoirs, that non-fiction also asserts and owes history. Moreover, Robert Fogarty, 2011, claims most memories tell the truth as they remember it. So, even if people who are living at the age of 100 and they have contributed something like to history and telling that historical events orally. So if you find something there, but what they remember that they can tell, not that every connected events. In that sense, the memories is like the fiction writer who creates a character on the page, thereby compelling the reader to imagine that figure as they enter a story. One partition, that story, that is titled as Address. This is by Gautam Ali's short story Address that was translated from the Bengali by Mir Ahmed Ali. This particular story, is from the Bleeding Border, Stories of Bengal Parties. He began, the morning. Allah Meherban, you tell me which one is my country. So during partition, how could I live in for me? Suddenly, they were asked to go either side. No, come on, you go to that side and let the other, come to this side. You don't know which land, that you belong. The address, which you hold now may not be the correct address. His head is bald and his teeth have fallen. The thin man was offering numbers on a tattered piece of cloth. So it was his land, it belonged to his father, his forefathers. He won't leave it at any cost. He won't go by the words of others who claimed that it was not his land. His life of toil and hope always revolved around it. So there is nation, there is nationalism, there is also nationhood. I just take an interesting saying that So mother and motherland, you know, are greater than, you know, heaven. Nation, nationhood. And out of which, you know, that you rise, you climb, that this particular not only means mother and motherland are superior even to heaven. Our gallant freedom fighters did not plunge into the battle against the British for health, position or power. They would live to see the next day. There is a coincidence, you know, that Tirunelveli is, you know, well connected with people. And some people, you know, were also, you know, here. T.K. Madhavan, who met Mahatma Ji in 1921 to discuss Vaikom. Vaikom, you know, the struggle against untouchability. Actually, the discussion, you know, they had here. And the application, you know, that in Vaikom, you know, that was designed here. Such a hero, you know, that was answered again. Hope to identify such heroes. And thanks to Professor Prof, you know, that making that event, you know, possible. That we are all taken back, you know, to know more about nation, our nationhood. And we also, I mean, make it a point that nationalism, you know, is part of our breath. And the blood, you know, carries, you know, nationalism very strong, you know, in us. Thank you so much. And good luck to you. My pronouns are kind. And if you have any clarifications, doubts, you know, I'm waiting. Thank you so much.